This is Docere Digest podcast, breaking down health concepts. This podcast is brought to you by Docere Life Center. This innovative clinic is finding new solutions to the evolving challenges mankind faces in the 21st century. By utilizing cutting-edge technology and testing, they find root causes and also offer treatment with energy and nutrition. What is the mission? To dynamically change lives for the better while impacting families for generations. The information shared directly or indirectly in the Docere Digest podcast is not to be understood as or misconstrued as medical advice. This information is not a replacement for your current health provider who is acutely aware of your current health state and course of treatment. Any information shared about a product or service discussed by any host or guest on this podcast is not to be interpreted as a doctor-patient relationship.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kyson Frank, and I'm here to introduce the Docere Digest podcast. This is brought to you by Docere Life Center, which is a clinic run by 5 doctors who are trying to help people live their best lives. And what we do is we specialize in actually going through and dealing with chronic illnesses, things that have stealth infections, things that are going undiagnosed or unfound in laboratory testing to be able to help people live their best lives. Part of one of our missions is to help you live the most dynamic life possible. And we want to help you in generations to come. So we want to help your children's children's children. And we want to be able to make that impact in your life today so that that gets spread down through these following generations. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to have each one of the doctors go through and introduce themselves. And we're going to start with Dr. Craig Farney.
As you said, I am Dr. Craig Farney. I am considered one of the feelers at the clinic, which means I like to dive into the mind and the emotions. I like to get at not only the what, but the why of what we experience. I'm interested in this because I have experienced mental and emotional issues most of my life. I've had times of almost debilitating depression, and I've had anxiety to the point that it's caused vertigo that's made me be bedridden for days at a time. So what's interesting too is all the while I've tried to have a life and a business and a family and a career, and it makes it very challenging. So as I've gone through my career, first as a traditional chiropractor and then into internal medicine and now into energy testing and energy medicine, what I have found very interesting is the interplay between the physiologic and the psychologic. I find it interesting how microbes such as mold or parasites and bacteria impact and magnify and even manipulate not only our overall well-being, but even our mental and emotional health. And what this does is this tends to create layers and layers and layers of adaptation. So my goal in practice is to ultimately get at what is the root of the problem. And for me, ultimately at the root, what I believe is stress that's based on what we think and feel about ourselves. What I think that does is it creates this subconscious, constant fight or flight mode that not only alters our physiologic function, but our immune function, and ultimately leads to damage and destruction. So my kind of closing thought is we're all on a journey. And my goal with each of my clients is I want to meet them wherever they are and help them to move to better levels of well-being. What I'm most passionate about is I hate seeing people not be able to live up to their purpose. And so what I work to do is help them become aware of and then help them overcome and move through any blockages to what God has created them for. So let me introduce the next doctor in order, Dr. Ben Bowers.
Thank you, Dr. Farney. Well, if he's the feeler, I'm the old guy. I've been around the longest doing this, almost 40-some years I've been in healthcare. And for me, what really started off for me and why I do what I do, I jokingly tell people it started before I was born, meaning that somewhere within my birth process, I was born without a certain portion of my intestine, and even a portion of that was deficient. And so from birth on, I had bowel restriction, bowel issues, bowel problems. I had to have enemas every day of my life, at least 4 or 5 days a week anyway. And then when I was 12, my mother said, it's time to change. It's time to retrain your body. And it's like I tell ladies, I've never birthed a child, but I've come close to some other things. Then when I was 13 or as a teenager, my brother was in an accident and broke his neck. And just being around all that and seeing the healthcare, and he died several times through that process and they were able to bring him back, I was really intrigued with healthcare. And knowing some of the issues that I dealt with and being around him, that absolutely changed my life, everything I had to do for the next 5 to 8 years of my life. And so I decided that if I was going to do anything in life, I should probably become a doctor. So I spent time doing that. Then other people in my family came down with some pretty serious illnesses. I myself have been paralyzed. I had a spouse and other kids and brothers and sisters all had health issues. And after I graduated and started my practice, it just seemed like the things that we were doing wasn't getting the results that we all wanted. So being a researcher at heart, what I decided to do that I was going to dive into some of these things and start finding out why what we do affects some people one way and affects other people a different way. I wanted to find the causation if I could. And this was back in the late 80s, and back then we didn't even know what the term functional medicine meant. But a bunch of doctors got together and started creating this different thought process. How do we look at things from a different way? In other words, if you're doing a standard treatment protocol and you're not getting the results you want, then maybe we need to look at things different. So from that process and having some other family issues, having some pretty severe health, life-threatening issues, I got involved in DNA and started doing a lot of research in the genomic stuff, and we'll talk about the epigenetic world and what I deal with and how I do that. And really, I guess where I'm at is we can look at what's wrong with people, right? Clients, patients, whomever, and see where their body is falling apart, whether it's a disease entity, a dysfunctional aspect, whatever it is. And at that point, we want to come in and find the why and then the causation of that why. As we tell people all the time, we don't care really what's wrong with you as much as we care why it's wrong with you. And we, all of us doctors, strive to get to that core issue and help find it. If we can find that and eliminate that, then in turn, we can turn things back around, right? And so when we talk about this aspect, we talk about, there's really 4 things we try to do. We got to find whatever the it's are, whatever the conditions are. And once we find those, then can we slow it down? Can we arrest it? Can we stop it? Can we eradicate it? And then repair the damage that it did. So that's what excites me. That's why I'm still involved in healthcare. And the opportunity to help people is what really just makes me feel good. And as Kyson said earlier, we're here to help God's children. Whoever he sends to us, that's who we want to help with. So with that, I'd like to introduce next to you, Dr. Luke Moore.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bowers. Like you said, my name is Dr. Luke Moore. Everyone's kind of hitting on what they do as a doctor, and I kind of had more of a story format because the only reason I'm sitting here is really because of Dr. Kyson and Dr. Ben. So real quick, in 2012, I was in college. I was attending WSU, Wichita State University here in town, and I was in pre-nursing, and I had this injury that I just couldn't get over. No one could figure it out. The only solutions were cast or surgery. And so I just, didn't want to go under the knife again. So I just kind of dealt with it. Otherwise, very active, healthy young man. And Dr. Kyson was just getting ready to graduate and come to work in Wichita with Dr. Bowers. And he took care of it and got about 90% improvement in one visit. And from there, I was pretty much hooked. And before I knew it, I found myself switching careers, and it really changed the trajectory of not just my career path, but my life altogether. And like I said, I found myself in Overland Park, Kansas at Cleveland University, where I went to chiropractic college. And then I started coming back to Wichita and watching just how Dr. Ben and Dr. Kyson were treating their patients. And it was so much beyond the musculoskeletal system and sports injuries. They were really diving, as they've already discussed, into the nitty gritty and finding out the why. And that's really when I knew this is the type of doctor that I wanted to become personally. And so, which is, functional medicine, natural internal medicine, whatever you want to call it. And, fast forward, August of, 2017, I graduate. And the plan was for all of us here to work together. And that, of course, kind of dissolved and fell through. And once again, big change in life trajectory. And we all kind of went our own way, so to speak. And there were some very bad for me, but I had to get knocked down. I was, a very prideful individual. And through all of that, the bad, but there was so much good too. Again, fast forward, I'm trimming a lot of fat off of this story for time's sake, but we're here now, obviously. And against all reason, logic, and kind of the general psychological consensus of working with your family, we're here. And there's I think you all would agree with me. There's a greater sense of passion and purpose behind what we're doing. And through all of that life journey, it became very abundantly evident that this is what I was put on this earth for, was, as the other doctors have said, which is to take care of God's kids and to do everything that I can to help patients achieve results, and to do so with love and compassion. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over now to Dr. Caleb Frank.
Thanks. So, like you said, I'm Dr. Caleb Frank. I'm the other Dr. Frank, and I'm also the other fielder in the group. So like Dr. Craig, I tend to be more focused on a lot of the emotional, the psychological aspects, the mental processes that lead you to who you are now. But like Dr. Luke, I also kind of wanted to go more with the story format because, I think he really hit on it. We've all had our own journeys, and, we've all been through our wilderness times, and we've all been to that point where we had to just basically keep trudging on and just hoping that the promised land was on the other side of the next hill. And I think in many ways, this is kind of that promised land, us coming together. We had planned that a long time ago. And like Luke said, it kind of fell apart, but then, it came back together in a way that I think is even better than we originally planned. And that's how God works. And, that's what we're trying to move forward on. But it's really funny for me looking back, because when I first graduated high school, was first starting college, healthcare wasn't even on my radar. It was, I was just focused on what I was good at in high school, which was math and singing in choir. So I started pursuing engineering, and I was on a choir scholarship. And then I decided, well, let's look into possibly doing music education as well. And it was after trudging through that for a little bit that I kind of came to that real understanding of the difference between a job and a calling. And it was around there that I decided what I want to do with my life is make a difference in other people's lives. I want other people to have better lives because of knowing me, or because I can, help them pursue something greater in their life. And I think a lot of that stemmed from just me always feeling like I was trying to learn how to thrive myself. And that's kind of one of my big buzzwords, is thrive, because I think when you're thriving, you're growing, you're producing fruit, you're living optimally. And that's something that has always been a struggle for me, because like, Dr. Craig, I struggled with a lot of my own mental issues, my own psychological issues, confidence issues, not believing in myself, and looking at how things went back to a lot of the ways I spoke to myself drove who I became. And then it's great that in the last few years, as we've been working through these new techniques, these new methods, I've really been able to see a lot of growth, a lot of change, and a lot of transformation in my own life. And that's what I want to take to our patients. I want them to be able to not just grasp onto physical health, but emotional health, spiritual health, and that's the great thing, is we're at a point now where we're not stuck to just a few systems of the body. We can actually treat the whole person. And that is really what excites me the most, is just being able to go, no matter what's going on with you, we can do something to help. We can help you in some way, no matter what's going on. Now, that is just something I've never been able to do before. And it's just so exciting to be with all of these guys as we, continue to innovate, continue to change our systems, and to always try to find that new thing or that next thing that we can use to help our next patient, or the patients that we have that we're still struggling with. We're always trying to get better, trying to, improve ourselves so we can improve others, eat more easily. So that's why I'm excited to be here. And, this is just an awesome thing. So I'll turn it back over to big brother, Dr. Kyson.
Real quick before you do that, it's a good thing sitting in front of mics being filmed doesn't create any of that anxiety or emotional stress.
No, not a bit. I'm good.
I didn't notice it on any of us.
What are you guys talking about? This is nothing. This is easy.
Yeah.
This is adaptogens,
Yeah. Adaptiverts.
All right, so I'd like to kind of take an opportunity to kind of talk about, I felt God gave me a vision or a calling earlier in my career to bring together a group of people, of doctors, and to come together to a certain conjoining to be able to help people. And while I had the vision, the timing wasn't right. And sometimes it happens in life where we feel like we're being called to do something, or we can see something, a vision, but it doesn't come to fruition. And sometimes it breaks your heart a little bit in the beginning, but God took us all on a different journey, a different pathway through different trials and tribulations, only to bring us back together again, stronger, more authentic, and able to work together and be so much more than we ever could have been if we would have joined the first time. And so it's powerful. It's amazing to see how God's done that in our clinic and bringing us together. And we've all learned and grown and just become much better in what we do as doctors and just as people in general to be able to do that. And I'm really proud of every one of you guys here and what you've overcome, what you've accomplished in your life, and just to become part of this. So just a quick introduction for me. Again, I am Dr. Kyson Frank. The reason why I wanted to do this podcast is because it's very important for me to kind of share kind of our story. My story in particular is I'm somebody who struggled with Lyme disease. And it's a big part of what we're going to be doing here is going through these different illnesses that kind of go undiagnosed or you struggle with, to the point where I'd been to doctors for years trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I was struggling to figure out what was going on. Why was life so much harder for me? I had other people in school that things just came easier to them. And while I felt intelligent enough to do it, I didn't have the drive. I didn't have the motivation. I couldn't even focus on transferring my math problem from one piece of paper to another to solve it. And it was frustrating because everything took me longer. Your energy levels get worse. And so as I got older, it almost, you wake up in the morning going, what do I have to get accomplished today? And you are budgeting your time and your energy because that's all I can handle because I can't do anymore tomorrow. I'm wiped out, there's nothing left. And so for me to get into the field of going into healthcare was, there's got to be a solution. Now, growing up, the only thing that made me feel better was chiropractic adjustments, realigning, help my body be able to detoxify and do stuff. It's the only thing I really felt relief from. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go that direction because nothing else I've done in any of the medical fields, nobody can figure out what's wrong with me. And partially because Lyme disease wasn't exactly something they were even looking at in that time. And in the 80s and early 90s, especially in Wichita, Kansas. And so they didn't know what to look for. They didn't know how to address it. They didn't even know what was going on with me. And they said, no, this is your life. This is normal. This is the way life's going to be for you. And that's depressing when you get told that because you're like, well, that sucks. And I guess part of my journey here is to try to help other people not live lives that suck. I'd say it put in such a pointedly blank way. And I'll talk about more of my story later on, but this is what kind of drove me as I started to go through and I started figuring out some of these things from the functional medicine aspect, get into different kinesiology and energy medicine type things that really gave me the best results and really changed my life in a dynamic way. Those were the things that I'm like, okay, if this worked for me, this is going to help other people. And I need to go out there and bring a team together, and we need to go out there and really help people just change their lives. And so that is why we are here doing the Docere Digest, breaking down health concepts for they're easier for you to understand and to give hope. There's hope out there.
Thank you for listening to the Docere Digest podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also find all the episodes and show notes over at docerelifecenter.com. While you're on the website, also be sure to check out the blog where you'll find videos and articles to help you proactively rebalance your health.